Hey, welcome back to the channel for another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at GraphQL again. And what's that going to mean? Well, we're going to look at how do we implement our queries. So remember back to the last video, we have our iOS application, Android application. They're going to be asking the endpoint for a certain amount of data, for a certain shape of data as well. That's going to be resolved with a query. Now, by the end, you should know how to implement a query in a serverless Azure function. So, what's that going to entail? Well, that means you're going to know how to do things like arguments. You're going to know how to transform different attributes into different names being returned. And then lastly, you're also going to understand how do we pass filters through. So, we're going to cover all those three things. And if you're ready, well, I know I am. I think that's enough of an introduction, so why don't we get started? Okay, so setting the scene. We've got a pet care. The pet care has come to us and it asked us, can you build us an application that allows for our internal staff to better manage the preferences of the pets being looked after at the center? Well, yeah, I reckon we can do that. So what I've done is I've modeled out 6 different queries which I think the application is going to be asking of our endpoint that we're going to build. So what we're going to do now is we're going to step through how we implement each one by one. Let's switch across to Postman and let's go take a look at the first one. So here we are in Postman. Let's look at the 6 queries and let's implement them one by one, starting with all pets. So we can see here that the flow of this query is pet, all, and then we're asking for the nickname, family name, and type. So how do you implement that? Go across to Visual Studio Code, let's look at our GraphQL. Well, okay, so we're here. So we can see on the left-hand side that inside of server, inside our types, we've got a pet, and then we've got a pet query type, and on that query, we support all being one of the queries you can do. So on all, we're returning back a pet select type, which is actually an implementation of this pet. So I think the pet's a great place to start. So why don't we implement that? Now this pet is actually going to be our Pogo class. So here we're going to go down here and go public class pet. And then I'm just going to paste this underneath so I've got reference to it. So first attribute is going to be public GUID ID. Next attribute is going to be the nickname. The next one is going to be the type, which we're later going to make an enum, to be honest. So let's go type. Then the next one is going to be the family name. Then the next one is going to be the sex, which is going to be called gender. And then the last one, which is a date time, is going to be our birthday. Like I said, let's implement pet type as an enum. So here we're going to go public enum pet type. And then inside of here we're going to put our values. So dog, cat, fish. And that's it. Now we can delete this out. Don't delete your end region. And we see that's the Poco's done. Now let's go up the top. We can see what's next. Well, this pet select type. So this is what's going to reveal the attributes that the application can call. So let's go here and implement it. So that's going to be an object graph type of your pet class. Now inside of that we need to define our attributes. So let's go here and do that. So we're going to go open brackets like this, and then we're going to put them in. Now there's 3 cases for attributes, which I like to break them into. So first case is going to be our scalar types who have no change in name. The next one is going to be scalar types which have a change in name. The last one is going to be non-scalar types, so think objects, and or when you're talking to another system, or data or an attribute's coming from another system. So let's do that. Case 1, case 2, case 3. If we go back, let's just go. So we're going nickname, family name, and type first to return. So let's go first and do the nickname. So nickname is a scalar type, which we don't need to change the name of. So that's simple. So we just do this. Always put a description. It's going to be much better in the long run. So nickname of the pet, even if it's a simple like that. Next, field x.family name, because it's the same, it doesn't need to be changed at all in terms of the name that it's being queried for. And then, to be honest, the last one, which is the enum, doesn't need to be changed at all. So enum is also considered actually to be a scalar type in the GraphQL world. And that's because it's actually going to get returned as a string. So we're going to go here and just go x type, and then we go description, and then go the type of the pet. So with that done, that's that, we can actually go ahead and let's start debugging. We're going to say debugging anyway to that, but we're going to go ahead and get started now. So once that's all come up, you should see a local host in green. That's all good. Let's go here, and then let's go and send that query. We'll notice that we come back with our dog called Fred Ula. So that's the first one. Let's go to gender next. Now, gender falls into that case too, right? Because it was called sex before. So how do we implement that? Well, let's go to our case 2. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go field, we're going to call it as field string graph type, and then we're going to go inside of here and we're going to name it what we want the client to call. So they're going to call gender. We're going to say the gender of the pet. But then lastly, we're going to resolve it by actually pulling it from the sex field. So we can go here and go sex, and then that's going to be renamed when it comes through. So let's stop that. We're going to go ahead and go start debugging. We're just going to give it a little bit of a minute because it's just going to take a bit to start up. Then we're going to go back to Postman. So that's good enough, should be finished. Let's go back to Postman, let's query it, and we can see gender come through. So we don't have to, we're not referencing it with sex anymore. So that one's done, all good. So we've got 2 out of the 6 done. Then we'll go to the next one. So get all pets, and we go all name. Now name wasn't a field on our POCO, so how does that work? Well, if we think of name, name's a combination of the nickname and the family name. So that's actually just a getter, to be honest. So the way I like to say is, if you don't have to go to multiple systems to get it, well, don't define it inside of here, define it in your POCO. So going inside of here, so we're going to go here and go public name. We're going to go get, and that's simply just going to return a string interpolation of nickname space family name. And then that's going to be that. Now why, just double checking why that is. That is because we haven't put a type there. So with the type, they're done. Now we can go, are we changing the name? Well, no, so it's a case 1. So let's go field x.name .description, the name of the pet. And actually, why don't we change that to the full name of the pet, just to be more clearer. So let's run that. And then once that runs, we should see that we can query now for name. And that'll return the full name. So it should return Fred Bueller. So let's go to here, let's run it. Okay, we've got Fred Bueller. Now, let's go and actually bring back more of the pets from the pet care. So to do that, up here, someone's been nice enough to do a repository class for me. I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I'm just going to do that instead. And then just trust me that it works, because we're going to move on to the next one. So here we've got all dogs. So we're going to filter down all of the pets in the pet care for just dogs. We can see that we've got an argument called type. So to do arguments, we're going to first look at it and go pet all type. So type is on the all function. So here we go pet, we go all, and we can see it's on here. So the way to do arguments is simply do arguments. They're going to be a set of query arguments like that. And then inside of query arguments, you're going to do it. So query argument, you actually instantiate that, and then there's an attribute inside it, which is the name. And then here you'll notice it's complaining because you need to tell it your type. So we're just actually going to tell it string graph type, because you'll see that's what we were putting in. Then inside of here, we're going to go string type, And actually, why don't we use our pet enum? So we can actually, so we're going to go pet type nullable, and we're going to go type, and then we're going to call it input actually is equal to context.getArgument pet type question mark, and then we're going to go here and go type is the argument we want to get, and then we want to return null if you don't get anything. So that's that. Now next we want to say if the type input equals null. Well, in that case we just want to return all pets, right? But in the case that it's not null, well then we want to return repository.allPets, and we want to filter it down. So I'm just going to use a link where, and I'm just going to say where x.type equals to that type input. And then as simple as that, we'll see that I can run that and that should work. And then that's our argument brought in. So notice there how we basically bring that string graph type, but then we actually transform it to that enum through that get argument. So you can absolutely do that. So let's go here, let's run that, and then we can see that that's all done. So we can see here that we've got our dogs now. Likewise, I could change that to fish, and then you're gonna see that I get my Bowles Woodlands and Ace Alexander, our 2 fish, but I'll change it back to dog for the moment. So let's go next to our all dogs and cats. So we can see here that we've got types and we're passing dog and cat. This is basically the syntax for arrays. So here we're going to want to pass in an array. So let's do another argument, which we're going to call types. That one instead is actually going to be a list graph type, so multiple of them, of string graph type. Once we've got that, we're then going to bring it in. So same as before, we're going to go list of pet type, types input equals context.getArgument list of pet type, and then we're going to go types, and then we're going to go null. Same thing. And then here we're going to actually surround this, right? So we're going to go if types input does not equal null. Well, we want to evaluate it to actually bring that in. So I'm just going to rearrange this. So else, we're going to do that. But if we do have the multiple ones passed in, well then we're going to go and we're going to return repository.allPets, not all foods, all pets, dot where x, and then we're going to go where basically your types input dot contains x dot type. And then like that, let's cancel that. And then we're gonna run it. And then once that runs, we should see it in Postman now. So if we go to Postman, let's post that in. We can see that we come back with both of our cats and our dogs. So that's how we can do basically multiple arguments inside of there if we want multiple values. Next, let's go to our last and final query, which is all pets with pets and food preferences. So again, all name preferences. Now, this is a case 3 in terms of attributes. So we're going to get food preferences out of a different system. So this is how we do our case 3s. Very similar to case 2. So we're going to return a list graph type, and then I'm actually going to make it of a food select type, which I've implemented somewhere else. And then I'm going to make that preferences. And then here we're going to make a description. So food preferences for the pet. And then lastly, how do we resolve it? So on the context, we've got the pet's ID. So we're actually going to go here. We're going to go repository.allFoods. And actually, no, we're not going to do repository.allFoods. We're actually going to get their preferences first. So we can go here and go list of GUID. And then we're going to go call that food IDs. I'm going to go repository.getFoodById. And then I'm going to go, actually no I'm not, I'm going to go food preferences. And then I'm going to filter, I'm going to actually do a .where for where the x.petID equals context.source.id, because that's the pet's ID. And then I'm going to go .toList. Actually, no, we're not going to .toList. We're going to go .first, and we're going to go .preferences. And then, once we've got those food IDs, now remember we want to return back a food select type. So I need that to actually be the food object. So to do that, I'm going to go food IDs.select. I'm going to go repository, because I've actually already got it in here. Get food by ID, and that's just going to be the X. That's going to be done, and then that's going to return. Now, if I wanted to look at what I can return, if I go to that food select type, now it's going to be inside my food type. Go into here, we can see that food select type has ID, brand, and name that you can return. So let's switch back to Postman and let's see, do we need that? So yep, so we've got brand and name, so we should be good. So let's go ahead and let's just stop our endpoint and let's run it again. Just debug anyway. And then we should have that up and running. So let's just go ahead and check. So here we can see that we've got Fred Euler and we've got his different food preferences in the order of which he prefers them. So that's basically our 6 queries done. Let's just rehash them. So all pets, we're getting all of the pets. All pets with gender, we did gender, which was translating a name. Name, we've basically combined 2 different fields. All dogs, we've brought in filters, and we've even learned how to do multiple arguments to that filter. And then lastly was connecting to a different system to get the preferences. Well, I should say the same system, but a different table. So that's basically how you do those different cases. Now, what I will say with this as well, in this video you did see that I have divided out my types. So this is the way I generally do it. So if you go to the resolver, you'll see on side here that the resolver has queries, then you have a pet query type. That pet then comes into this query here, which actually says which queries we can do. Now also what you'll see is we actually only have one query, and that's the all query. And that's how powerful GraphQL is, because we have a single endpoint which we can talk to and get all of our data and the exact shape that we need. So with that, let's wrap up this video. Okay, so we implemented 6 different queries which the pet care system can use to talk to our endpoint. There's still a lot more to implement for our pet care system, but at least we've gotten started. Now, let's recap that. So we implemented our 6 with one endpoint, with one query. So that were resolved to be the all query. The all query had 2 different arguments. One was type, which was just one type. One was types, which is plural for passing in multiple types. This allowed the client application to filter for the exact type of pet that they wanted to view for. The next thing was that we implemented the attributes in the select type. So there was a pet select type. That pet select type told GraphQL, or told the client application, what they could query for. Those types then were resolved into the POCO and where to take them from. And remember, we had 3 different cases. Case 1 was that there's scalar types which don't need a name change. Type 2 was basically that there are scalar types which do need a change of name. And then type 3, or I should say case 3, was that the data is coming either from another system or a table, or it's a non-scalar type. So scalar types of GraphQL are things like string graph type, float graph type, int graph type, decimal graph type, datetime graph type. They're not objects that you define. So pet select type was a good example of a non-scalar. Food graph select type is another one of a non-scalar. They're ones that we've implemented. So I'm going to wrap it up there. That was a video showing you how to implement queries inside .NET for an Azure function and for that GraphQL endpoint. If you like this video, please go ahead and give it a like and make sure you subscribe, because I'm sure you're going to see more GraphQL videos coming in the future to you. This is Coder Meets Data, Travis Sansom, and I'll see you in the next one.